So we're going to focus on this election, and we're going to be focusing on what happened after Trump won after November 5th. Because there are certain cities right now in which the voting results made some shocking twists and turns. Now, again, majority of these cities that I will name: San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York City, and finally the best and number one always, Chicago. We're all, again, in blue states, and they all, again, weighed in favor for Kamala. But within those cities, more people were also turning out to vote for Trump. Now, again, Trump didn't secure the votes, but this was higher than anything we saw in 2016 and in 2020. Now, in my city in particular, there's also a growing movement against the Democrat machine. This has never been seen before, and I say this as a longtime resident. I am 4 generations deep in this city. It is in my blood, from my great-grandfather to my grandfather to my mother, and now yours truly right before you. I have never seen anything of this level, of this magnitude, shake the Chicago political scene. Now, for those who don't know, Chicago is a hyper-segregated city. And yes, to my Trumpers who watch the show, to the libertarians or conservatives who watch the show, let me repeat this again. Chicago's not a communist, socialist, Marxist, Leninist utopia. It ain't. If you want to use those words, fine, as slur, okay, fine. But in all reality, this is a neoliberal corporatist nightmare. And because of it, a lot of people have resigned, broke away from being involved in politics. So when I hear the words, "Oh, well, Chicagoans voted for this," uh, just a handful of party loyalists who follow orders. The majority of this city's population doesn't get engaged in politics, and it's really sad. But there is an engagement happening, and that is dismantling the machine now. So many people are upset. Now, the thing is, when you run in Chicago politics, you're technically, in theory, running as an independent. But then you got to carry the D, hold the D, wrap the D around your neck, and then you become a Democrat. I know it's an insidious system. You want to know why the things are so corrupt as they are, why the machine is? Check out the book American Pharaoh. It'll tell you about a guy named Old Man Daly who made this city into the landscape that it is. Communist utopia. I didn't get that memo. Corporatist nightmare? Oh my goodness, yes. But first, let's go ahead and talk about this on a national level. And I want to play this video because we are seeing results that have never happened before. So let's go ahead and play this video.
Donald Trump, you can remember back in 2017, the liberal cities were the resistance, the core of the resistance. What happened in 2024? You think of a major city in the United States, Donald Trump put up the best Republican performance for a Republican nominee for president in at least 20 years, if not the entire 21st century. We're talking about Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, San Francisco. Across the map, Donald Trump put up historically strong numbers for Republican candidate, for president, in places that, truthfully, if you had asked me 8 years ago, I would have never thought possible.
No, I mean, it is really stunning. So what exactly is driving it?
What's driving it? I think immigration, one of the things you mentioned earlier on in that last segment, is part of it, but I think crime is a big part of it as well.
Yep.
If you look at Gallup polling and you ask Democrats nationwide, are you satisfied or dissatisfied with our efforts to control and bring down the crime rate? What you see is the dissatisfaction number now versus a decade ago. Look at that, the unsatisfied number from 35% to 58%.
And it's more than that too. Property taxes. I'm proud to say, and my goodness, my family and I have been on edge about this. Our genius mayor, Mayor Brandon Johnson, who's a moron. Okay. Again, I wasn't impressed with his campaign, and he did not have my support. And I'll maybe for the Patreon, you know what? For the Patreon show, I'm going to explain how I voted in the last Chicago election, what I wanted to see, or at least my hopes to see. But nonetheless, Brandon Johnson wanted to raise the property taxes on the people of Chicago who were being screwed over so desperately bad. I mean, my goodness, we're being raked, and I better not hear, "Oh, you voted for this." No, people. There's a lot of people just don't vote in Chicago politics because they're burnt out by it, and they have been burned by it. Again, the only way we're going to change things, we can't just vote our way out of it. We got to start building movements, which is what's happening now in Chicago. The city council for the first time in its infinite wisdom, said F you to raising the property taxes. So can I get a W in the chat? Because really, it was really going to be bad. It was to quote Trump, this is one of those times where it's not good, not good, not good at all.
The satisfied number dropped by 20 points. My goodness gracious. And I think that's part of the reason why you have seen these liberal DAs be ousted in places like San Francisco, in places like Alameda County, in places like Los Angeles. The crime rates have simply moved a lot of these voters to the right.
And look, obviously we're sitting here in New York,
yes,
talking about this in Manhattan where there was a swing. But when you look at a map of New York City, biggest city in the country, the big swings right, yes, it was in Manhattan, but it was also in other parts of the city. And that gives you a real sense of who it was driving the shift.
Yeah, exactly right. It was in the Bronx, it was in Queens, it was in Brooklyn. And if you break it down by racial areas, right, you look at the assembly district that has the most Asians in it, you see a massive shift. A massive shift. Look at this. Donald Trump gaining 27 points versus where he did 4 years ago. The highest Hispanic percentage in an assembly district, a 25-point shift. Highest black percentage for an assembly district, a 6-point shift. What's going on is if 2017 or 2016 was...
Yes, and this is also a sign too, because I have a map of how people voted in Chicago. Now, again, majority of the city is blue, but there's some red popping up. I have to say, you only could be pushing people for so long. Now, I would say to anyone that did vote Republican, again, leaving Democrats, running to the Republicans, why you're changing one team for another, a new boss for a different kind of boss, but all are the same, okay? But nonetheless, this is something that needs to be studied on, and we are going to follow through on this, especially when the next city election happens here in Chicago. We will cover it because, my goodness, is there going to be an epic pushback against the Democratic machine. I could feel it in my soul.
Was the election of the white working class moving over to the Republican ranks. The 2024 election was Trump doing historically well with minority voters.
I mean, it is really incredible. And those numbers say
they're amazing.
They're amazing. I mean, they are. If that doesn't give you pause, if you're a Democrat looking at this world, I don't know what will.
Now, I'm going to play another video here, too, that kind of had me in a little bit of a shock. Shock. This took place here in my city. Trump supporter in Chicago has a warning for Mayor Brandon Johnson. And Brandon Johnson has been doing himself favors, especially with the recent tax hike that he wanted to propose. Again, please, listen. It's one of the rare times where I want to thank a group of politicians for kind of doing the right thing. Not kind of, actually do. Then that's dismissing Brandon Johnson's property tax increase. We dodged the big bullet here. I cannot stress that out enough. So can I get a W in the chat? Just a few W's, maybe some celebration emoji signs. That would be ever so nice.
I want to know, how does it feel that Trump is in office right now? You see the Mayor Brandon Johnson? You underestimate us. You underestimate the black people, and you underestimate Chicago red. We're the thorn in y'all side, and we're going to be the thorn on everybody else in this council member side too. If you don't stop what you're doing, we're going to take matters in our own hand, and we're going to stop it. When you took ShotSpotter off after the DNC, more shots have been committed. Do you know how many people got shot and killed? 20. One was a police officer, and he was doing his duty. And then some maniac over here wanted to shoot him dead, cold-blooded and stuff. So my thoughts and prayers to the family of that Chicago police officer, Rolf Hand. But Brandon Johnson, I'm going to say this to you once. I'm not going to repeat myself again. If you don't stop this madness, not only we're going to come after your seat, but guess what? The worst news is Trump assigned Matt Gaetz as the AG. Once he come in after you, he going to sit up here and audit all this money that you've been spending on these illegals at the barbershop on the south side that didn't have no money so far from you and stuff. So why? I know what's going to happen. You're going to go down to the press conference, beat your chest up, and then you're going to talk all that smack. And then you're going to say, if a black man has not had the opportunity like a white man. But guess what? I'm a black man, and I don't see at you. I see through you. And I see the lies that you have been saying since you became office. We had enough problem with Lori Lightfoot, and now she's out because of racism. So when we vote you out, which racism are you going to address? White racism or black racism? You cannot figure out what the lesser of the two evil will be. So guess what's going to happen? You know that Trump had pulled 45% of the voter in the state of Illinois, 37 in the city of Chicago. That's the statistic. That means that Illinois is turning purple. We're going to turn red. And for some of these city councilmen member, I warn you, do not sit with Brandon Johnson. We're going to get them seats.
He's not the only one. And now I want to just address what he was saying in regards to Brandon Johnson, doing a speech to the press. A few weeks ago, he did a press conference meeting where he was blaming racism and bigotry. But the thing is, on the South and West Side neighborhoods, in the Black and Latino neighborhoods, many people are being vocal about Brandon Johnson. And listen, Mayor Lightfoot was not a popular mayor. She came in here with much praise and love, and then, oh boy, we had to deal with her for 4 years. And the thing is, if you're earning the hatred and more than what Lightfoot received, Mayor Brandon Johnson, you are an all-star performer at screwing up. I've never seen anything like this. And the thing is, a lot of his constituents' districts that supported him during the last mayoral election cycle are now organizing against him. This is something unheard of. And this mayor also wasted a lot of the city's resources on the migrant shelters. And I brought this up before again. There was no plan for the migrants. I feel sorry for many of the people that came here, but there was no plan for them. They were used as political pawns. And I don't like it when people are getting hurt, especially the men, women, and children, especially when many of these facilities lacked sanitary concerns. Okay. There was not enough proper sanitation. And not to mention, I brought this one story up, an example where a shelter was going to be built on a South Side community, and the community protested it for two important reasons. Number one, no one in the state of Illinois, city of Chicago, Cook County informed the residents that it was going to be built. And number two, the residents saying, hey, you can't build it on that lot. There's toxic metals and other dangerous materials in that area. Those people will die and get sick, or get sick and die. There you go. Die and get sick. Sick and die. There you go. Chicago will be a battleground, and Hardlands Media, being an independent network here in the city of Chicago, we're going to be covering it. We're going to be talking about it. There's going to be a fight, and the machine is sputtering out of control. The DNC took place here in Chicago, and it didn't bring in voter enthusiasm. There were protests taking place here. Granted, those protests were not as large as I thought they'd be. And myself, Daniel, my other co-founder for Hardlands Media, we were there covering it, interviewing people. RBN was there, Due Dissidents, Russell was there, and Jimmy Dore was there. And what I want to say to my colleagues in INN, at Due Dissidents, at the Jimmy Dore Show, at RBN, and yes, even to the libertarian conservative networks here, you're going to keep a close eye on Chicago. Because, yes, it's easy to look at these other liberal cities, but see, Chicago is the Democratic machine. It is the heart of the beast. It is something that has maintained its power and influence for many decades. Okay? And it has its origins even before Old Man Daly came around. But this machine now is starting to crack. It is starting to burn on the inside. And it's due for an epic meltdown, the likes of which will make Chernobyl seem like a firecracker. This is something unheard of in the realm of politics. And I want to pull this up here because, again, people are asking, well, gee, Kit, talk to us about the map. Talk to us about the map. What is actually going on here? So first of all, I want to pull up this article here from, again, Block Club Chicago. They've done a lot of great work. So I want to pull this up here. Trump attracted more voters than ever in Chicago amid overall victory. Okay. So while Kamala Harris won Chicago with about 77% of the vote, support for Donald Trump went up by 6 percentage points. You know what that 6 percentage points is? That is, again, voter turnout, not that high. But still, nonetheless, that is a big shift. That is a huge number. Just even if it's 6%, I don't care. That's gigantic. It's huge. It's very huge. and it's a seedling because there's also a movement trying to recall Brandon Johnson. That's never happened before. Donald Trump was elected president of the United States on Wednesday. Of course, we all know that. Harris won Illinois, was about 53% of the vote. In Chicago, Harris received 652,919 votes, or about 77% of the vote, while Trump received 187,137 votes, or about 22% of the vote, according to early results. Trump improved significantly on his past performances with Chicago voters. In 2020, Joe Biden won Chicago with 82.5% of the vote. Trump received about 16% of the vote that year, getting 181,234 votes. Results were similar in 2016 when Hillary Clinton won the city with about 84% of the vote, while Trump received just 12% of the vote, or 135,317 votes. So in comparison, Trump in 2016 got 12% of the city vote. In 2020, 16%, and increased now again in 2024 by 22%. I don't want to hear, oh, those are low numbers. No, these are big numbers in the realm of politics and political identity in Chicago. Trump's support went up in several Chicago wards this year. He won the 41st ward on the far northwest side with 54% of the vote. The Chicago Republican Party also held a northwest side election night watch party at Tavern on Point, a bar in the 41st ward. This is the first time a Republican presidential candidate has won the 41st ward since 1992, when President George H.W. Bush beat Democrat Bill Clinton in the ward, according to the Tribune. Trump lost the ward with 47% of the vote in 2020. So that's how he lost the vote, at least in 2020. While Trump only won the 41st ward, he got over 40% of the vote in the city's 50th, 38th, 13th, 11th, 19th, and 23rd wards. In all 6 wards, support for Trump has increased since 2020. The machine is losing its grasp of power. Now, I have mentioned this before on the show, that when you have politicians who have been in power for decades, and see, in Chicago, we have perfected feudalism, where, let's say, an alderman dies, their son or wife, niece, or other relative could obtain that seat. We have perfected neo-feudalism. See, Chicago, there's a lot of dynastic families. Did you know that we had a father and son be mayor of Chicago connected together for 40 years? Now, granted, there was a space in time between Old Man Daley and Daley Jr., but that's how long we've had a dynastic family controlling this city. And we've had aldermen in power for more than 40 years. That's how crazy things are. And it's led to a disdain for politics. And the fact now that there's a shift happening, a change happening, could say a lot about who will be running for the highest office in the city of Chicago. Because, again, for those of you who may not know this, there was a point in the Chicago wards where it was the aldermen who controlled the city, until Old Man Daley came in and forged the office of mayor into be the end-all, be-all seat. He became the American pharaoh who had a direct line with Washington, D.C. Again, continuing forward, folks, there's a realization now that there's a change that's happening. So that gentleman that was speaking to the city council, and yes, to Mayor Brandon Johnson, he's not the only one. There are countless other videos that are out there, and it's only the beginning.
SWAT team took your neighbor today. Watch them as they walked him away. You told yourself extremists come in all different shapes. Met his eyes and lowered your gaze. Is it too late for us to ever change? We are collecting the dust of better days. They're always watching us, but we're never safe. We're not meant to be safe, not meant to escape. We aren't meant to wake. Sheriff stopped your daughter today. Pepper sprayed her twice in the face. He must have had good reason if he'd treat her that way. At least that's what they've taught you to say. But is it too late for us to ever change? Once we're collecting the dust of better days, they're always watching us, but we're never safe. We're not meant to feel safe, not meant to escape. We aren't meant to wake. Feds arrived and had you detained. Said you'd made some posts they unchanged. Tased you till you felt like you'd forgotten your name, or life before they had you contained. Oh, life before they had you contained. The SWAT team took your neighbor today.